So let's rewind a little bit and start thinking about when we first start a project. How can we first gain inspiration based off of solving a particular problem that a customer base might have? And so in this case, right, let's just pretend for the sake of the tutorial that I need to help people turn around emails, right? They want to collect customer contacts and be able to track the flow of different customers as they're initially marketed to and then eventually enter the sales funnel. So looking into that, that's a traditional CRM platform. When you go onto this website, which is called Mobbin, they provide examples of different wireframes on different websites that exist in the world. They also have mobile apps. You can see iOS and Android in the top left here. But just right off the bat here, funnily enough, we see two different type of CRM products. So maybe we'll come back to Adio in a future episode. But for now, we're going to jump into Mailchimp, which is one of the most ubiquitous CRMs, and I think is an easier starting place. Not as simple because emails is something kind of tricky to work with, but in terms of from a purely UI and web technology perspective, separating out the email portion, that part is pretty straightforward. So going through this, whenever you go to one of these websites here on Mobbin, you'll see mostly highlights. They're going to highlight a bunch of different pages that are kind of the center points of Mailchimp. Those things are kind of dangerous sometimes to follow just specifically the highlights. Mailchimp at this point is a pretty legacy company, so when you're creating a new project, there's going to be a lot of stuff there that is not relevant. And so, whether you want to go to their marketing page, which is their landing page, right? You can kind of try to discern what is the important pieces about Mailchimp. Like, what is the central core call to action, offering, reason for being that they're presenting on their website, and kind of single-mindedly focusing on that. And honestly, as a startup, that's probably something that you should be doing from the get anyways. And so, it kind of works out that you're deliberately planning in this particular way. So just taking a look at their landing page here and honestly comparing it to their regular landing page, you can even see a little bit of drift there. Mailchimp from when this was captured to nowadays, and it's in September now of 2024, right? They've added SMS to their platform pretty recently, so just between the time when they captured this to now, there's already some difference, but for the most part, right, looking at this is even better because, honestly, expanding it to emails and SMS, I was noticing there's some offering drift, if you will. Not that this was that much better, but, for the most part, we see how they've laid out their landing page, and that's something that we can adopt, understand what is the kind of central reason for being and product offering, which is what they present here in this kind of title and subheader, if you will, here on their landing page. Emails into revenue, right? It's the quintessential value proposition that they're offering. And so, we're just going to try to take note of different UI elements so that we can start translating them into our own product, right? And so on the landing page, some pretty basic things. Their little logo here at the top, we can pretty much ignore this top banner here. That's something, probably something not really needed in the MVP. They have a bunch of different product offerings here. Again, this is more, sophisticated later stage company items here, for an MVP, for a startup, probably not needed. A search bar, again, probably a more legacy item as opposed to something that a startup might have. Language localization, again, for an MVP, probably not needed. When you become a little bit more serious as a startup, I probably do recommend to actually have a contact number out there. Being able to do customer service directly as a founder is something that I would particularly advocate for, but obviously, cost prohibitive, time bandwidth prohibitive. But honestly, I think that the top tier founders are able to make time and carve out time, especially given that this is an enterprise SaaS products. There's a low volume of customers anyways. You should be able to deal with sales calls, sales inbound that comes from a phone number, or customer service. Someone sees their phone number, they can use that as a direct complaint line, which as a product-led organization in the early stage, you should really be trying to get as much feedback as possible. So I would recommend this. I'm not going to include it for this particular tutorial, just for the MVP, but this is something pretty trivial, as you'll see later in the code. A login and sign up. So another piece here for authentication, I actually would prefer if early stage startups and MVP products don't actually have a sign up. And you might be like, whoa, what does that mean? Well, just thinking from an authorization perspective, collecting people's emails, their personal information, their passwords, dealing with two-factor authentication for security purposes, that's just something that, maybe if you come from a larger company and you're able to whip that together really quick, that's awesome. I appreciate it. For a lot of, early stage founders, it's just an extra headache that you really don't want to deal with, encrypting people's passwords, saving, different types of items there. I just think that it's a lot better to rely on larger companies to handle password management, to handle two-factor authentication, security keys, all those different types of things. In this MVP, we'll be using two different OAuth services. I'll show you where you can see all of the different options. You've probably seen them before. We're going to be using Google and GitHub, but for the most part, you probably have seen Facebook or Salesforce or a bunch of different other potential login options. And I definitely recommend that you rely on other people's offerings, especially in the early stage, as opposed to creating your own. So just looking at this, right, we'll just create a login here, and then we'll create a get started / sign up. But really, it'll just lead into that OAuth sign-in page. Aside from looking at the marketing pages, we also want to draw our attention. There are UI elements. I personally don't really look too much at that. They just try to, point at different UI elements that they have. I personally am more, interested in the particular user flows here. So you can see they have onboarding, they have home, they have different screens that they're showing for that show how people can do certain things within the application. They're pretty thorough about showing it. You can see screen by screen how a larger company basically wants to deal with these types of interactions. And you can adopt and learn from them on your own. Now, for the sake of this tutorial, and you're going to hear me saying that a lot, we are going to be focusing on a few of these, not the entire product line offering, because again, a lot of these things, like for example, automations that I scrolled to here, surveying, that type of stuff, including like creating a website, creating social media posts, right? Creating a website here, publishing a website. That's probably out of scope for this particular MVP. We might be looking at them in different products when it's that product's core central offering. For example, like creating a website, if we were to do a Squarespace inspired website, that would be something that we would look at. But for the most part, right, we want to be interested in what are the flows that are core to the central part of Mailchimp, right? And again, you kind of see it here in their landing page, right? Turn emails into revenue. So what are the flows that we're really interested in? Feel free to go to this website, take a deep dive into it. Maybe I'll do a separate session. If I find a really design savvy person, we can do kind of a breakdown of the UI, UXs within these. But the ones that we're really going to be focusing on is the onboarding here, campaign, so creating a marketing campaign, collecting your audiences, so the different the emails that you're collecting. Analytics is going to be important to understand what your changes are week after week. And lastly, let's find it. Profile. Here we are. Profile, notifications, accounts and billing. So a lot of quality of life stuff. So just taking inspiration from looking at these different flows. You can feel free to look at them on their own time, and look in the link in the description in the future if we potentially decide to do a more deep dive into the UI UX. But just understand that when we go into the design phase, we're using a lot of inspiration from these companies. And obviously, as an early stage startup, you should try to do that as much as possible, just because they're paying designers wild amounts of monies, right, that you're probably not going to be able to afford anyways. So, might as well leverage what other people have figured out is the best for an at-scale company, right, a successful company. So, that's pretty much for kind of the investigation phase. You can try to understand more about Mailchimp, dive into their particular website, sign up for an account yourself just to kind of understand, and maybe use Mobbin as a guide to follow through. But yeah, that's basically my internal process for how I would investigate a website that I might want to take inspiration from. Now that we finished investigating Mailchimp and taking a look at the different flows that make up its core experience, now we have to start translating it into designs, right? And here you can kind of see I've already gone through the work of going through and making all of the wireframes, so you don't have to suffer watching me go through and do it. The main process in which I actually go through and do it is for all of the flows that we've identified earlier and some of the quality of life pages that we've taken note of. I've really, just because Mailchimp is a legacy and more mature product, I've taken more so higher level inspiration from it. The designs honestly don't really age that well, and a lot more experienced designers would obviously critique the designs that Mailchimp has pretty heavily. But for the most part, I'm looking at being able to boil it down to its quintessential pieces and drawing inspiration from it, right? It's not going to be a one-for-one clone just because I don't think the designs are that great. But there are a lot of different pieces that are good and can be drawn from the main core pieces that support ultimately the value prop that was decided. So, just to segue into talking more about the value prop, right? When we talk about the landing page, there's some things that anchor it. One of it being a kind of call to action or reason for being for the actual website. So when we look at it, right, this platform, what does it actually aim to do? Well, let's go back again to the Mailchimp landing page, right? Their value proposition is turning emails into revenue. There's a lot more pieces that are on this landing page, right? Over the years, again, this is a legacy product, I think probably 10 years or more, how old this product is. There's a lot of different features that have been kind of bolted onto this product. And, just even now looking at it, right, they have added SMS as being an inclusion into it. So from the time that we're recording, just literally right now, they've updated how the website looks and have started adding more and more pieces onto it. Really, we're going to boil it down to its base parts, right? Turn emails into revenue, right? That's the core value proposition. So we're going to create some form of core value proposition here for our Poke CRM product. Right? Just looking at the way in which they formatted it, right? They've had some form of top-level title here, a subtitle, and then a sign-up button. So we're just going to take those core pieces, right? And, the reason in this product, by the way, Excalidraw, this whiteboarding app, created the wireframe to use kind of this handwritten look and, not sharp edges, but more of these rounded edges. I want to just basically, with a lot of MVPs and proof of concepts, and the fact that we're not cloning something one for one, want a lot more room to maneuver, right? And an ability to basically change things on the fly if needed, right? That a lot of these designs aren't set in stone. You'll also see that I've kind of outlined some things with green and then some things with white. So the difference there, and it's just my internal notation here, green just means that, it's not going to appear in the final design. I just want to basically let myself know that this green border here denotes a container. and that these elements inside of this, right, this title, this subtitle, and this button here all make up or all are part of this container, right? And in this logo here, there's going to be some form of container, right? Just because a logo, there's two parts of it, the picture, the image, and then text, right? So these pieces that make up the logo, I could make it more granular and just kind of draw a little circle here, and I just decided not to do it. This actual green border here that I drew is not going to appear in the final design. In the nav bar, I do expect for there to be kind of some form of separation from the landing page and this nav bar. And when we look at the structure of this, right, when we've created these kind of containers, later on, you're going to see in the code, right, a lot of times we look at containers as being rows and columns. It's an easy way of structuring things. And so for this, right, this container here that forms the nav bar, we can think of it as being some form of row, right, that has two elements in it that have some form of, space between or justified. They're justified within this container with some space between it, right? And when you go into the code, you're going to see those terms being used in some of the code, right? But we want two things that are separated on either side, one side being the logo, one side being the login, within this kind of row style format. Within this center container here in the landing page, we're going to have a container, and these are probably going to be in a column orientation, right? That these things are stacked on top of each other with some form of spacing in between, right? And so, it kind of mirrors this design here, right? So from this landing page, we just want to take note, and you can kind of see that we're going to go into auth next, authorization. We have a sign up button here, and we have a login button here. Now, we're going to see here that they both actually end up in the same spot, into an actual login. And that for that reason, or the reason for that is that, for a lot of MVPs, proof of concepts, and honestly for most startups, I would actually recommend not actually creating your own email and password login, but actually rely upon larger companies, OAuth, right? OAuth provider. And being able to utilize their two-factor authentication, their own encrypted password, storage, all that type of stuff. Like for you, startup, new product developer, unless it's absolutely needed for whatever reason that you need a username or password, just let larger companies like Google, like GitHub, which we're going to use in this project, let them handle it. They've got the money, they've got the resources, let them handle it. You don't need the reputation loss from accidentally leaking passwords or leaking emails or personally identifiable information, your name, your profile picture, all that stuff that could be leaked, just because in an MVP, it's just not worth your time to think of. So again, remember when we're looking at here, we have the same container format. In this case, we have a nav bar, but we actually don't need the actual border of the container here. We just need the elements in place. So again, this is going to be a border that we're going to have within the actual design. The border here that's being drawn just for the sake of showing that these are together in the same row container, not going to be in the final design. Next up, we're going to think about more pieces that are in the onboarding. So in Mailchimp, we saw that to follow anti-spam laws, the business address is going to need to be there. So we're going to bundle in kind of a user organization creation, and just take note that we're going to need some form of form to take in someone's information relative, about their business, about their address, all that type of stuff, right? So we're going to actually twist this design a little bit in the final code, but this will provide a kind of guideline for what we want to do. So just remember that we need to include this within the kind of onboarding portion of the application. So when someone signs in for the first time, if they don't have an organization already set, then they're going to be prompted to create it here. just because of this anti-spam law related. This is probably just for this particular application with the email CRM. Probably not needed in other spaces, other type of platforms to have, address, city information, all that type of stuff, your business address. For the most part, you probably just need what organization the user is a part of. A lot of times, that's just to add other users and kind of organize in that way. For this, it's actually needed within the law. So once we're done with the onboarding, we then immediately just go to the home screen, right? And Mailchimp has a particular design for the home screen. We're gonna adopt different pieces of it. Again, the way that we've created it. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, there is gonna be a actual border here. So we're gonna create it in white. That there's gonna be actually a dividing line here. Between this kind of sidebar that is, if you notice on all of these, going to be appearing on pretty much all of the screens. All of the screens are going to have a sidebar, and then you're just going to have like a little platform view here to do whatever you need to do related to these four kind of, 3 actual actions and then a quality of life settings page. So on the home screen, right, they just list off all of different quick actions and, some pieces of information. So I'm actually going to change it and I'll put this down here. I think this is some awkward white space here. These are just choices that I've made. So we're actually just going to put them in the top nav bar here with the kind of home label. So whether we need a new campaign, which again, that's to create, an email campaign, automated emails, that type of stuff, or import contacts. If we want to add more contacts for whatever reason, we want to, we met someone at a networking event, we got down their name and email, they didn't, we're just kind of making it easier for them. They don't have to go to the online sign-in form to write down their contact information. Well, we can just import it there. And then some kind of top level analytics view here. Okay, moving on to the first set of screens, right? Just going through. We have the view of the different campaigns, 2 separate types of views, one in just a list format, another in a calendar format. Pretty straightforward, again, taken straight from Mailchimp over here. They have a list view and a calendar view. All pretty straightforward there. There's a contacts page, right? Which has all of these basic informations in a table format, ways to add new contacts. You can import them, you can create a new one. So we'll be looking at different ways to being able to do that, right? We have a dashboard page, right? It was just a different way of saying analytics. They call it, right, their marketing dashboard. I think to think it more about performance. So just different ways of measuring and showcasing performance, right, whether it's via campaigns or in contacts growth. So those are the 2 screens there that I want to focus on. And then some kind of quality of life settings page, right? So a couple misspellings there, but whatever. You get the point. Whatever, that's not a word. We have a couple of different things that we'll have, like there being a kind of user button pop over, right? So with the user button in the corner with a little profile picture that you'll sometimes see, right? You'll be able to click on it and then be able to access the settings screen. So there's just little minor bits here. I didn't want to make it too crazy to kind of overwhelm people, and this kind of explanation over the wireframes can get pretty long because it can get pretty granular with discussing the design. But again, the main basic structure is there's a landing page. We log in with the user's preferred login method, deal with some government regulatory asks here, along with creating the user organization for the first time. Then they're going to go to the home screen where they're going to be prompted to be able to do certain actions. They're going to be able to create campaigns. They're going to be able to import and create new contacts. and they're going to be able to have a performance dashboard where they can see how well their campaigns are doing and how well their contacts growth is going. And then lastly, a quality of life settings page. Great. So now that we've taken a look at the different designs here, we are ready to get started in building Poke CRM. Let's jump right into the code.